Hello, I'm Nate the Effing Great, and what did I just watch? So, over the past 24 hours, I've seen two really good movies, and in all honesty, very good ways to end 2017. That being Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, as well as The Greatest Showman. So, I'm going to do two reviews on here, and I'm going to give them both probably a fair amount of time, so let's not waste any time. Get right into it. Starting off with Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. So a lot of people remember Jumanji back in the 90s. That featured Robin Williams, the early Kristen Bell. I think it was Bonnie Hunt, if I'm not mistaken. So this was basically a sequel from what a lot of people were saying. But this was also one of those movies that was its own movie, in all fairness, because there were a couple references to the earlier, Jumanji movie that I definitely want to talk about. That I do appreciate that they did that, but like I said, it was just feeling like its own movie. So the story basically is Jumanji makes its return. It first comes back as a board game, but then it has a mystical power that turns itself into a video game, which I can kind of understand. It was kind of interesting to say the least. Then four kids come across it: Bethany, Martha, Fridge. A lot of people know him as because of his football deal, and Spencer. And each one of these guys have their own very specific characteristics that definitely do play a factor into the game. Bethany is definitely very self-absorbent. She really is kind of one of those teens that you would kind of expect who would love to just do selfies and just talk on her phone and do stuff like that. She's just kind of one of those preppy girls that you would look at and think, wow, she's everything that I would want. Martha is kind of one of the social outcasts of the group, where she doesn't really associate with a lot of other people. She doesn't believe in liking people, stuff like that, which was very interesting. But it did make for a really good story. The other one, Fridge, is basically your basic jock. He's very passionate about football, and he really wants to make sure that he stays on the team no matter the cost. And one of the costs was that he basically used one of Spencer's, basically the main character's, I'm trying to remember, Spencer's homework deals. Spencer is one of those guys who is very quiet. He's very shy. He's afraid of everything. He thinks everything's out to get him, which was kind of interesting to say the least. But in all honesty, it did make for some very funny moments. They all get transferred into the game, and this is where, of course, everybody changes into their avatars in the game. Spencer turns into Dwayne Johnson, a.k.a. Dr. Smolder Bravestone. Bethany turns into Jack Black. Professor Sheldon Shelley Oberon, which in all honesty is probably one of my favorite parts of the entire movie. Karen Gillan is Martha's avatar, a.k.a. Ruby Roundhouse. And the Fridge turns into Kevin Hart as Franklin Mouse Finbar. Each of these characters have their own specific, characteristics, own personal strengths, weaknesses, abilities, so on and so forth. They're all trying to basically find a way out of the game where they have to battle they have to battle the villain. They have to take on all the things that come towards them. They meet up with Alex, played by Nick Jonas, and is the character of Jefferson Seaplane McDonough, I think it is. I don't know. It's a really weird name. So let's look at some of the positives that came out throughout this movie. Positives, they definitely do a great job of building up the characters, having them all confront their weaknesses in real life as much as they should confront their weaknesses in the game. But in all honesty, it really gets to bring out some of the funniest moments. Like, of course, Fridge is now shrunk down about 2 feet, and Spencer is... And it makes it seem like, for Spencer's character, Bravestone, they show like their strengths and weaknesses. He had none. Everybody else seemed to have some. One had, a problem with endurance, another had issue with venom, and for Finbar, he had these weaknesses of like strength, endurance, and cake, which in all honesty created one of the funniest moments I ever thought I would see. And what I also loved about this movie is the fact that they definitely played on some of the gaming glitches or the gaming features that you would see that could either get annoying to you or would just be so repetitive, but in a good way. Like, they would talk to a certain non-playable character, and they would just keep repeating a sentence over and over and over again. And because it's like, wow, this really does feel like a game. They have certain challenges. Spencer really does a great job of basically explaining, okay, that this basically is a game where it has levels, and levels have different challenges, and these challenges help them advance further in the game until they reach the final battle, and, blah, blah. It was really good. And they also have all these random challenges that are worded like cryptic, and is very, very awesome to see. It makes for a really compelling movie. Dwayne Johnson, Kevin Hart, Karen Gillan, and Jack Black, all 4 of them are just really good together. I was very surprised I'm not too surprised with Kevin Hart and Dwayne Johnson, because they've worked with each other in the past during Central Intelligence, that's right. They are a really good comedy duo. Honestly, it's really good to see these guys working together. Karen Gillan, who a lot of people know better as Nebula from the Avengers, from Guardians of the Galaxy, I really looked at it and I thought, wow, she's just really good. And Jack Black is, of course, just funny in and of itself. And in this movie is the fact that Bethany now has to get to the fact that she is a dude. And one of the funniest scenes is that everybody's going to the bathroom. She doesn't know how to work a penis, to say the least. And she's just like either overexcited, or she's thinking like, oh wow, this is actually crazy. Just really making it seem like, when there's those characters who turn into women, they have no idea really how to do it. They're just amazed at how things go. It's really interesting to see a woman playing a man, and just seeing the reaction where it's like, well, I don't know how to work a penis, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to do this. It's just really funny how that stuff does indeed just come out during this movie. Another really funny moment is the chemistry that everybody has, and where they're also trying to build off the stories in the real life. Like for Spencer and Fridge, they weren't actually as best of friends, but they build their friendship back up again, and they learn to appreciate each other, which is really nice. And it's kind of a classic deal, but it really does feel good to have that kind of a story. For Bethany and Martha, they basically become friends, and Martha kind of learns more about herself, about why she's closed off from the world, why she doesn't do things like normal other kids would do. And one of the funniest is Bethany teaching Martha to flirt, and it's, again, so funny, because a lot of people would think, well, a woman should teach a woman how to flirt. Jack Black teaching a woman how to flirt is one of the funniest things that I have ever seen. I felt like I was just going to die on the floor seeing him doing like the sachet, doing those facial expressions where you're trying to seem like, you're interested, you're disgusted, or even like the turned on look, which was awesome. The hair flip deal. Just, oh my God, it's just so amazing. The villain in this movie, Van Peltz, who was played by Bobby Cannavale. Van Peltz. I'm wondering if that was supposed to be See, now I'm kind of curious now, and I'll have to look this up, and maybe I'll mention this throughout the. Yeah, okay. So it's a different version of Van Pelt, the hunter from the 1995 film Jumanji, but it just, it was just one of those things that was kind of a nice little callback. And that was another thing I loved about this movie, was that the callbacks that they made from Van Pelt to bringing back the Jumanji board game, then incorporating a lot of the stuff where, they're melting into the game. I thought that was kind of cool. Even they made a reference to Alan Parrish, a.k.a. Robin Williams' character, during the movie, which I thought was absolutely great to see. I was all for that. I was thinking, wow, they are really going out here to try and make this movie as relatable to the original as possible. That being said, some of the issues that I had here were the fact, well, one more positive thing before I go on to the negatives, is that there was a lot of action. The CGI looks really good, and it can be funny. It's just a really solid movie, to say the least. Now, some of the negatives that I found during this movie were the fact that it, like I said, it tries to be its own movie, because obviously, the Jumanji board game turns into a video game. They had the characters going into the game, and somehow, if they win that game inside, then they can come back, which I'm wondering if that's the same way that Alan Parrish came back during the game. But then why would he come back as... oh, no, that actually does kind of make sense now that I think about it. Because I'm thinking, well, he would return, but he's not exactly the same as he was when he entered into the game. But then again, they tried to make it so that it was like, I think 20 years later or something like that, or 10 years later, something around that time. I don't know. I think that some of the parts in there were, like I said, they were good, but at the same time, there was kind of some plot holes where it's like, well, this is kind of more of an... I definitely do think that it's the same thing that can be said about, Thor Ragnarok. It's a comedy about a superhero movie. This was kind of more of a comedy about an action movie, kind of to say the least. I think an issue that I also had was probably some of the chemistry that was here. Yes, they all worked together, they all did stuff, but they never really tried to build up a story between some of the characters. Like Spencer and Bethany, they're friends now, but they never really give a full reason as to why. Fridge and Bethany are kind of just there in the end. As soon as Martha and Spencer kind of hook up and they start dating, it's just kind of one of those movies where it was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. But again, the movie itself, I thought it was trying to be its own, which isn't always a bad thing. It's just one of those things where I just looked at it thinking it has some relatability to the original movie, but again, it's trying to be its own deal, which isn't bad. It's just sometimes confusing to some members of the audience where they watch this and they've seen the original Jumanji. I'm like, okay, well, how does this relate to the original one? How does this relate to the original one? How do, the animals escape from here? Then how did it, it's just really confusing to sometimes. And the ending, well, maybe I should say one more positive thing, is that there was a point where it definitely seemed like Alex and Bethany were going to be an item, but after the game was over and they won, they they went back. They saw the house was completely back to normal. That they passed by. It was used to be known as a freak house, but then it was just completely back to normal. And they see Alex. He's grown up. He's got kids. He's got a wife. And it's kind of one of those things where it's kind of sad. It's like, wow, I would have thought that Alex and Bethany would have ended up together, but they kind of did play the deal where Alex goes back to his time, which was 1996. And one of the things that was actually kind of cool, though, is that they also had a son and a daughter, and the daughter's name was Bethany. And one of the coolest lines there was that, we named her Bethany after the girl who saved my life. So it was kind of one of those things where it's like, well, they're not going to be ended up together, but it's good to know that Alex really does show that he cares and really appreciates everything that Bethany did for him. So that was really cool to see. Yeah, the only other issue that I had was the ending where they hear the drums and they take the game system and then they just smash it. It's one of those things where it's like, they could have seriously done that with the first movie, and they decided to just throw it in a lake and just get rid of it. Maybe never to see the light of day again. But then they just kind of smashed up, and it's like, okay, so you're basically destroying everything that could have made for another great Jumanji movie. Why do that unless they're going to say, oh, it's indestructible or something like that? It just felt like a really, kind of like a downer thing. That, like, after everything they went through, they just make it seem so easy to just get rid of that game of Jumanji by just destroying it. And then they had the, Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses, and it ended the movie there. It's like, really? You're going to end the movie like that? Final grading for this one, I would give this movie about 3.5 to 4 stars. It is a good movie, and it has funny moments. It's something relatable. I would not dare say that this is like a direct sequel to the original Jumanji, but it is one of those movies that definitely tries to be its own. So it's something that I think the kids will enjoy. Some parts of the movie, some of the older fans will enjoy, but in all honesty, it's one of those movies where I look at it and think, oh, well, it's a sequel, but it's its own sequel. So, going from there to The Greatest Showman. This was a musical I honestly looked at and thought, well, it's probably not going to be that good. It's probably just going to be one of those shows that probably would just be kind of okay. And one of the things that definitely stands out, actually I should probably do this. I should probably do the Rotten Tomatoes deal, because I do want to kind of address that issue too. Was that okay, so for Welcome to the Jungle by Jumanji, they had a tomato meter of 77% and critic consensus and audience score of 90%. Critic consensus: Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle uses a charming cast and humorous twist to offer an undemanding yet solidly entertaining update on its source material. So relatively pretty good, I guess you can say. Greatest Showman had a Rotten Tomatoes score of 50% on the tomato meter and a 90% audience score. Critic consensus: The Greatest Showman tries hard to dazzle the audience with a Burnham-style sense of wonder, but at the expense of its complex subject, far more intriguing real-life story. Okay, I will be the first one to admit that this is probably one of those movies that it is not 100% accurate. But in all honesty, I was totally okay with it. There's a lot of movies out there that are never going to be 100% accurate and true to the actual material that happened. Now, obviously, with a lot of other movies, such as Hacksaw Ridge or Patriots Day, they try to keep it 100% accurate, but they'll never be able to do it completely accurate. They just really try to make it as accurate as can be. And I think that this is what was going on with the movie The Greatest Showman, where basically it talks about the Barnum and Bailey circus, how it all started. P.T. Barnum coming from humble beginnings and then building a family, and then he builds up this extravagant circus where he brings in all of these different characters, all these different quote-unquote freaks that they were saying. And obviously in this rush of popularity and the rush of just wanting to be the person that he always wanted to be, he became something that he would grow to hate, that he would grow to not respect. And a lot of people definitely saw the change in him. Then in the end, he finally realizes that one of the best things about being a part of this circus is that they were basically like second family. It's like, yeah, you can turn us down, we're used to that, but you gave us a chance, and we can't forget that. We can't be mad at you for that, especially when they realize, well, hey, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, well, just remember that you're always going to have us, even if you lose everything. It builds up to be a really good show. So some of the positives throughout this movie, first things first, the songs, the music. I mean, the lyricist is by the Academy Award winning lyricist from the movie La La Land. So obviously when you hear that, it's like, well, this should be kind of interesting to see. I fell in love with the soundtrack and the mute songs that were in here. I really could not say that there was any music in there that was either, too boring or too mediocre, anything like that. All the songs were just really good, and it was just a combination of almost just like everything. I had such a hard time really hating this show, in all honesty. They had, musical numbers like The Greatest Show, Come Alive, A Million Dreams, a very powerful one, This Is Me, where the circus acts, they know that, who they are, and they are accepting who they are. They don't care about what other people say. They can call them freaks, they can call them, outcasts. They can say whatever they want, but they are proud of who they are, which was a really, really good song. The chemistry between Zac Efron and Zendaya, Philip and Anne, I really loved the chemistry that was building up between the two of them. It started off as one of those deals where it was love at first sight, and then getting to know them. Philip was still kind of hesitant just because she was abnormal, and he was still on this like higher, pedestal, I guess you could say. But he learned to really accept her for who she is, and in return, she was still not quite fully on board with it. But she eventually came back and realized, these feelings were true, and that she was going to be in good hands with this guy, which was really cool to see. Some of the characters on here, oh my gosh, I really enjoyed it. Hugh Jackman as P.T. Barnum was absolutely amazing. Zac Efron, I've seen him in only one other musical, and yep, you guessed it, High School Musicals 1, 2, and 3. And in all honesty, I actually preferred this performance over all three of those movies put together. Zac Efron's character is great. It's relatable. It's one of those characters that definitely still has a bit of that, Troy Bolton charm, but still just adds something different to it. I thought it was really good. Michelle Williams, who I absolutely thought was great in Manchester by the Sea. I think that there was one time I even said it was kind of like okay, but I've learned to appreciate her acting. She really did an amazing job during this one. Zendaya, who also played the role of Michelle in Spider-Man Homecoming, it was really interesting to see her go from kind of being like this kid who didn't really give two bits to this woman who is very passionate about what she does. And she still had that like hardcore deal where she's not going to just give her heart away. She wants somebody to really show it, which was really cool to see. I absolutely loved that. Just a lot of great people on this cast. I mean, they had a bearded lady, they had a dwarf performer, they had a guy who was like so many feet tall, they had the tattoo man, they had a lot of great stuff going into this movie. So many just absolutely wonderful songs, so many great performances. I will definitely say that this movie, for me, and for Hugh Jackman, this is probably like his second best performance other than Logan as his number one. I forgot how good of a singer Hugh Jackman was. Holy cow. The only other movie that I saw him singing was Les Miserables. And comparing that movie to this movie, it's just so different. And I enjoyed this role that he had a lot more than the role he had in Les Miserables. I loved the songs that he sang. I loved his personality. It was just really cool to see that. A lot of the great stuff where he talks about, basically looking at all of these people a different way, and he just looks at them and he just smiles at them. He's just basically saying, there's a potential in you. There's something special about you. And basically bring everybody out from the darkness and into the light where everybody can see them. It was just absolutely amazing. And, to see him go from that and having the fame get to him where he basically shuts off the people that brought him to that stage really was very relatable. It was very organic. I loved it. It was really great to see. Now, some of the negatives about it, I think that people can definitely say that one, of course, being that it's not 100% accurate, understandably so. The other thing being probably the scene where P.T. Barnum has the deal where it seemed like he was having an affair because one of the performers kissed him on stage, and there was a picture that was being taken, and of course the wife was just saying, make it seem like, well, how can I trust you after that? It was kind of one of those things where it was like, okay, maybe they're going to be, well, they're back together again. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, that's just probably a little unnecessary drama in there, but it did turn out to be something good in the end. The chemistry between Zac Efron and Zendaya, I liked. I really did like it. I just felt like the relationship was going through like too much of a roller coaster deal. It was like, oh, we like each other. No, we don't. No, we do. We don't. We do. We don't. It was really bizarre. And I don't want to say it was bizarre. It's just one of those things where it was like a little kind of like a cat and mouse game, I guess you could say. On one hand, Zach was Philip was the cat, and Zendaya was the mouse, Anne was the mouse, and then it was kind of like a role reversal. It was kind of one of those things where it was kind of okay. The CGI animation where they had the animals, I would say the same quality, if not maybe a tad bit better than Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle. I literally think that there's nothing really too wrong with that. I thought that, they were probably not going to be able to get these wild animals to do these things. So what's the next best thing? CGI animation. Totally fine. It wasn't one of those situations where they looked too... It was just one of those things where it was like, okay, well, they are trying to create something wonderful. And like I said, the music is great. The story is good. They try to base it off the real life story as much as they can. I respect that, and I am looking forward to how much success that this continues to build up. I think that there were some people that said that there was artistic license that was taken, and some reviews actually said that this movie was Fox inspiring and shallow. I think they would only say that just because of the fact that they definitely played it to the whole, go back home, you freaks, or do this, you freaks, and blah, 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 blah. Like all the negativity that was brought in there. But it's understandable because back in the day, a lot of people were not accepting of the unique, and there's still people there. This is one of the things I truly loved about this movie, is that there are still so many things that are happening in this world where people are different, that they are always going to be different, and they're looking on them as freaks and as circus folk, and they are looking on to them as just nothing more, and they're not going to make any difference in this world. It's just one of those things that really speaks out to me. And there was a lot of points during this movie where I got emotional because I do remember still feeling those feelings of not being fully accepted by society. But the one thing that I took away from this was a comment that my dad made after the movie, because he and I went and saw it. We both thought it was really good. Mentioned the fact that it was probably not exactly 100% accurate, but it happens. Like I said, one of the things that he said to me was continue to bring joy to other people, and that was the one thing I can definitely describe about this movie, is that yes, they're different, but they're bringing joy, and they're bringing wonderment, and they're bringing smiles to the faces of these people. They're not being laughed at, they're just having a good time, and they're seeing all these people, and they're just amazed at how they are, and how they can be so relatable as actual human beings. And that's just one of the things that I really enjoyed. In fact, it was so powerful that it's one of my 2 life mottos. One being, well, I'll end the show with that, because that's going to be like my new catchphrase, my new life motto at the end. So, final rating for this movie, I definitely would give this 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was very good. I absolutely loved it. Like I said, the song was great. The scenery was amazing. The CGI animation wasn't too much. The story's there. And despite the fact that not being 100% accurate, it's still a really good movie. So, that being said, I'm going to wrap it up for this edition of The Game Changer. What did I just watch? So, of course, you guys, you can always follow me on Twitter at RealFNGame. You can also give me a like on the Facebook fan page on Facebook.com/Changing Up the Game. And going to be signing off, going to be watching SmackDown Live. So, thank you guys so much. and do what. And the only thing that I can say is that we are here to change the game one day at a time, and we're here to bring joy to others one person at a time. Thank you guys so much. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've waited for. You've been searching in the dark, your sweat soaking through the floor. And buried in your bones, there's an ache that you can't ignore. Taking your breath, stealing your mind, and all that was real is left behind. Don't fight it, it's coming for you, running at you. It's only this moment, don't care what comes after. Your fever dream, can't you see, getting closer? Just surrender, cause you feel the feeling taking over. It's fire, it's freedom, it's flooding open. It's a preacher in the pulpit and your blind devotion. There's something breaking at the brick of every wall, it's holding all that you know. So tell me, do you want to go? Where it's covered in all the colored lights, where the runaways are running the night. Impossible comes true, it's taking over you. We light it up, we won't come down, and the sun can't stop us now. Watching it come true, it's taking over you. Colossal we come, these renegades in the ring, where the lost get found, every crown of the circus king. Don't fight it, it's coming for you, running at you. It's only this moment, don't care what comes after. It's blinding out, shining, anything that you know. Just surrender, cause you're coming and you wanna go. Where it's covered in all the colored lights, where the runaways are running the night. Impossible comes true, intoxicating you. We light it up, we won't come down, and the sun can't stop us now. Watching it come true, it's taking over you. It's everything you ever want, it's everything you ever need, and it's here right in front of you. This is where you wanna be. It's everything you ever want, it's everything you ever need, and it's here right in front of you. This is where you wanna be. This is where you wanna be. Where it's covered in all the colored lights, where the runaways are running the night. Impossible comes true, it's taking over you. This is the greatest show. We light it up, we won't come down, and the sun can't stop us now. Watching it come true, it's taking over you. This is the greatest show. It's coming in all the colored lights, where the runaways are running the night. Impossible comes true, it's taking over you. This is the greatest show. We light it up, we won't come down, and the walls can't stop us now.